Hey class, this is Mr. Clark, and this is a video lecture on Chapter 24, Industry Comes of Age, 1865 to 1900. Next slide. First section is entitled, The Iron Colt Becomes the Iron Horse. A nationwide railroad network tied the nation together as never before. You can see on this map here that by the 1870s, the United States was crisscrossed with a system of railroads that would lead to the development of this country. Next slide. Revolution by railways. Among the many changes brought about by railroads was the creation of standard time zones. And these should be somewhat familiar to everybody here. This is our time zone, Pacific time zone, the Mountain time zone, the Central time zone, and the Eastern time zones. These time zones didn't exist before the building of the railroads, especially the Transcontinental Railroad. And this was part of the development of this country. And there were many other aspects of the railroad that affected the development of our country. Next slide. Wrongdoing in railroading. Scandal and monopoly shadowed railroad development. There were fortunes to be made in the railroad, and some of the wealthiest people in the United States, such as the Vanderbilts, won their fortune through the railroads. And where there's money, there is a temptation for scandal. And the Credit Mobilier scandal is one of the more famous, infamous scandals in American history, involving kickbacks to politicians for railroad building projects. Next slide. Government bridles the iron horse. Federal and state attempts to limit railroad power failed to break up regional monopolies during this period. So during the mid to late 1800s, among the giants of industry who made their fortune in railroads were people like Leland Stanford and Cornelius Vanderbilt and others. And they became among the richest people, not just in the United States, but in the world during this period. Next slide. Miracles of mechanization. Technological progress in many parts of the country spurred growth during this period. The 1800s was a period that was known for many inventions, including the telephone and the phonograph and the light bulb. And many of those inventions were either directly or indirectly influenced by perhaps the greatest inventive genius in all of history, the American Thomas Edison. Next slide. The trust titan emerges. Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Morgan became synonymous with the power of American trusts. And these three individuals, probably more than any other three, were dominant in building financial empires in this country, and these individuals became multi-millionaires. Next slide. The supremacy of steel. Steel was the backbone of the American economic boom of the late 1800s. Andrew Carnegie built Carnegie Steel. Later it became U.S. Steel, and the steel industry was the backbone of industrial development of this country. Building railroads, for example, required steel, among many other things. And this visual here is a steel factory somewhere in the Midwest. Next slide. Rockefeller grows and American beauty rose. Standard Oil was a model of how monopolies crushed competitors. John D. Rockefeller created his empire in part by either buying out or eliminating in one way or another his competition through both horizontal and vertical integration of his industry. Next slide. The gospel of wealth. Some sought to justify the new super wealth of America by invoking religion. And this concept, known as the gospel of wealth, again, many justified this wealth by saying that these millionaires were basically chosen by God to do what they were doing, and that they were somehow divinely chosen to do what they did to develop this country, that they had a moral responsibility. Next slide. Government tackles the evil trust. The federal government sought to limit the power of trusts with the Sherman Antitrust Act. By the late 1800s, many voices in America were calling for government to step in to try to help regulate, break up, limit the power of these giant corporate entities that had emerged in America during this time. And one first attempt to break up the power of these groups was known as the Sherman Antitrust Act. This is a political cartoon showing Standard Oil's, John D. Rockefeller's company's power over many areas of the economy. Next slide. The South in the age of industry. The southern part of the United States lagged behind the North in industrial development in this period. In the wake of the Civil War, the South did not benefit from the industrial boom that was sweeping the North, and largely the South remained quite rural and thereby less wealthy than the North, and this would continue well into the 20th century. Next slide. The impact of the new Industrial Revolution on America. The changing role of women is just one example of the impact of the Industrial Revolution. Society would be transformed by the Industrial Revolution on many levels, including the role of women. Women began to dress differently, they began to act differently, they began to seek different jobs, they began to demand the right to vote, and all of this was directly and indirectly connected to the societal and technological changes that were happening in this country and elsewhere. Next slide. In unions, there is strength. Laborers throughout the workforce began to realize that they needed to organize to win gains. Hand in hand with the growth of industry would come eventually a growth in the power of organized labor, and the first labor unions in the United States were born in the second half of the 1800s. Next slide. Labor limps along. The National Labor Union, founded in 1866, was the first major attempt to organize workers. The influence of this particular union didn't last very long, but it helped set the stage for later union development in the United States. Next slide. Unhorsing the Knights of Labor. The reputation of the Knights of Labor and the labor movement was damaged by the Haymarket Square bombing in 1866. Oftentimes violence would accompany the organization of workers. Employers did what they could in many cases to try to stop workers from organizing. Oftentimes their workers were fired. There was often violence that ensued when factory owners would try to bring in non-union labor. And most often this violence was blamed on the labor unions themselves. In the case of the Haymarket Square bombing in Chicago in 1886, the Knights of Labor were blamed for this event where several people were killed in when a bomb was thrown into a crowd. And this is a artist depiction of that event. Next slide. The AFL to the fore. By the end of the century, the American Federation of Labor became the leading force in the labor movement. And their first president was an individual named Samuel Gompers, and he's often known as the father of the American labor movement. And he was a very prominent individual in this period. Next slide. And that's it for today.